heading in the right direction.
Thank you very much for pointing out the eye of the eagle. And we have to keep our eye on this particular prize, and that's rebuilding the American manufacturing sector. I handed this chart to Mr. Tonko a while ago. It really needs a further explanation. What we did beginning in 2000, actually before that, was to develop a FIRE economy. Finance, insurance, real estate, not manufacturing. So manufacturing was allowed to decline, and of course real estate, finance, and insurance grew and became the essential economy in the year 2000 to 2010, and of course the great collapse in 2007 and 8 as a result of, as Mr. Tonko said, regulatory oversight disappears, anything goes. We're reversing that. Mr. Altimire, you talked about the egregious tax policy of giving a tax breaks when companies offshore jobs. It was 2010, just before the new Congress came into, actually 2009, just before the new Congress came into effect, that we enacted legislation that eliminated much of those tax breaks. Now there's more to be done, and in the President's budget he calls for the full elimination of tax breaks to companies that offshore jobs, and as he said here in the State of the Union address, turn that around and give a tax break to companies that bring jobs back to America. And in his budget and in his proposals are specific actions on tax law that we must take to carry out that commitment to American and foreign countries that want to bring jobs back to America. We can do this. Public policy plays into this. The budget, the research and development piece of it. That's the genesis. That's the start of the idea of a new business or a new technology. And then the manufacturing support that goes with it. Tax policy, we've talked about the advanced manufacturing systems. All of those are the feedstock to get these companies up and going so that the entrepreneur, using the research and creating a small business, will ultimately create a bigger middle class and reigniting the American dream in doing that. Mr. Tonko, I'm not sure where we want to go with this. I think we ought to spend a few moments talking about transportation. If that's okay with you, gentlemen?
Well, I think before we leave
Sure.
this talk of manufacturing growth, and you know, both of you gentlemen held up tremendous charts that tell the story. What I think is interesting is when you overlay those two charts with the deficit, the trade deficit, and the loss of manufacturing jobs, they mimic each other. They absolutely trace the same curve. And so as you drop those manufacturing jobs, as the commitment was the tax policy and the investment in manufacturing declined, and the deficit, trade deficit impact from Representative Altmire's chart, they're mimicking each other. You can see the precipitous drop here is almost at the same rate as the impact of the trade deficit. So, you know, we can step back and deal with facts, or we can be in denial. We can be bitter about success and come onto the floor and try to hold back success. But instead of a tug of war on this House floor, let's tug together. Let's tug forward to make certain that we're investing where we ought to. Let's cut where we can, but invest where we must. And one of those investments has got to be in the human infrastructure. We're talking about capital investment. We're talking about physical infrastructure. But we need to talk about the human infrastructure with this manufacturing comeback. And when I see advanced manufacturing embraced in my district, where we as a hub in the 21st Congressional District of New York, in the capital region of New York, have seen tremendous growth in clean energy and innovation. Those jobs are coming about because of an investment in nanotechnology, semiconductor research, so as to transmit more electrons over an exact same size cable from what we do today. We talk about the investment in chips and growing those chips to a smaller dimension so that they can have an impact, a partnership with agriculture, communications, energy generation, healthcare, you name it. Any industry can be impacted by that nanotechnology investment. So there's all this investment, but you're going to need the workers who are now being part of an advanced manufacturing stage in our society, where we're having more and more investment, keen intellect. You need to train those workers. And the President has said, look, we've got a vehicle that is very sound out there. They're called community colleges. In my district, we have not only Hudson Valley Community College, Fulton Montgomery Community College, Schenectady County Community College, but we also have an Ag and Tech campus in the SUNY system, the State University of New York system in Cobleskill. All of these are doing cutting-edge involvement in research that goes toward, that spills over to the worker. Clean room science, retrofitting homes to solar, making certain that you have the trained workforce for nanotechnology. All of this is happening in our community colleges, and the President said, let's go forward and invest. There's, I believe, an $8 billion investment in our community colleges to train the worker. So let's not pull back on success. We see what's working. We know what has to happen. We have the formula based on history that ought to speak to us. And let's get it done. The worker can't wait till the next election. This decision-making on this floor should be about hope and opportunity, not about the next election, but about the next jobs we can bring into the districts of this great country, the congressional districts, that in a cumulative format will spell a reigniting of the American dream. A reigniting of the American dream. My district is the donor area to the Erie Canal. And we saw a necklace of communities emerge from that investment, which, by the way, came at a tough time for this nation. And Governor DeWitt Clinton said, look, here's a solution. We have a tough economy. Let's provide opportunities for shipping our cargo, building. And what happened? A number of immigrant patterns traveled to these shores in hope of that rags to riches scenario, and they invested. They were the brains behind the Industrial Revolution. Immigrants who came here and developed, along with the industrial giants, an agenda for jobs. We can do that again. This is the American pioneer spirit. The DNA within my district is about a pioneer spirit, where these mill towns became the epicenters of invention and innovation. And the same story can be lived today if we're willing to reignite the American dream through investments in small business, entrepreneurs, and a thriving middle class.
Mr. Tonko, thank you. And you really hit one of those issues directly, particularly the education issue. And we ought not jump to transportation before we deal with the investment in the human capital. That is, in the American worker. And the President did, in his budget, lay out $8 billion for community colleges to work directly with companies to educate their workforce. I can give a specific example. In, again, Davis, California, there's a biopesticide firm that actually goes out and finds microbes or various kinds of natural occurring material and uses that and makes that into a biopesticide, not a chemical, but a biopesticide. They need technicians in their laboratories and in their manufacturing. They go to the community college to bring up the necessary skills and bring those workers in. So there are jobs out there, but they have to have the education behind them. And so much of what the President is proposing, not only with community colleges, but with the Pell Grants, and proposing $30 billion going into our K through 12 schools so that those schools can be upgraded, and an additional $30 billion to bring the teachers back into the classroom.
Representative Garamendi, if you'll just yield on one
Sure.
point. What I believe is also important with the community college investment is the stated purpose of creating partnerships with the private sector.
Exactly.
And so it's not like one person working in a vacuum or one institutional network working in a vacuum, but rather a partnership that is fostered by this budget process, by the thinking here of the administration working with Congress. Let's develop those partnerships with academia. Community colleges training people and retraining. Many people are starting second careers. They lost a job through no fault of their own. This was a brutal time on America's manufacturing base. Let's bring that base back, and let's give them the tools they need to be successful so that it grows more and more opportunity, so that we can have that as sharp as a competitive edge as possible as we enter into the global sweepstakes on jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Tonko. Mr. Altimire, I see you're kind of ready to go here.
The gentleman has given me so much to work with here. On community colleges, and then I'll transition into transportation, as the gentleman would like to do. I visited just